As the trade deadline looms, the New York Mets are on a 7-game winning streak. On the show today, I'll talk about a great performance by Max Scherzer in the Mets lineup, and I'll give you your last little bit of preview of what could happen in these final moments leading into this year's trade deadline.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, talking about this game against the Nationals, here's a Mets team that finally looks like that same group from the first 2 months of the season. The lineup that passed the baton, the lineup that hit with runners in scoring position, where the home runs didn't matter because everyone was contributing. Now we're seeing that again. Whether it was the Daniel Vogelback edition or not, this is a lineup that looks functional again. And it's because you're getting great contributions from your main players, right? When you have Starling Martin and Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, all right at the same time, this lineup is as potent as any in baseball. That's why they were a top 2 lineup through the first couple months of this season. You need those guys to perform. And as much as we're going to talk about the deadline throughout the show today, and can the Mets get a JD Martinez or a Wilson Contreras? Do they make that big splash, or do they make a smaller splash? Is it a Wilmer Flores? Is it some other right-handed bat that we're not thinking about? Regardless of who's out there, no matter what player the Mets add at the deadline, the driving force to them being successful this year, it's those 5 guys, and then you're just trying to get some competent production from the other hitters around them. That's why Vogelback's been so impressive. That's why the at-bats they're getting out of Mark Canha, who seems to have 2 hits every night right now, has been so impressive, and other guys down the line. So you look at this team today, the 13 hits, they go 5 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Brandon Nimmo goes 4 for 5. Alonso, Canha, and McNeil each had 2 hits apiece. And you go to kind of the scoring breakdown. The Nationals get on the board first. Josh Bell has a double in the bottom of the first. A rare error by Starling Marte thrown to the wrong base allows a run to score. But the Mets get right back in it in the top of the second. Pete Alonso draws a leadoff walk. Guillorme gets out, but the bottom line is the Mets were able to string together 5 hits in the inning. You had McNeil, Tomas Nido, and Starling Marte all get RBI knocks. Suddenly, the Mets are up 3-1. Then in the third inning, Pete Alonso hits one of the most impressive home runs you'll ever see, digging out a low pitch and hitting a screaming line drive that just got over the wall. Hit that thing so hard, over 110 miles per hour, that it just found a way over. It didn't look like a home run off the bat at all, because it looked like a line drive off the wall. But when you hit it as hard as Pete did and you get just enough loft on it, he was able to clear the fences there. And that was big for the Mets, because in the bottom of the fourth, Scherzer faltered a little bit, gave up a home run to Juan Soto, no shame in that, but then allows 3 singles, and that allows another run to score. So suddenly the Mets only had a 4-3 lead, where that Alonso home run made the difference. But the game got broke open in the 6th inning, a great moment for Francisco Lindor, who's still having a really good season. At some point, once we move beyond the deadline, it is past time to another deep dive on guys like Lindor, Starling Marte, even a Nimmo or a McNeil, Alonso for that matter, guys that deserve some recognition for their play recently. And Lindor has just been amazing, particularly on this road trip. What was it? Getting on base, I think 3 times in each of those games. I believe it was, 3 hits in the last 2 games in Miami, and maybe he got on with 1 hit and 2 walks in the first game. That's off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that, but he's been red hot, and this was such a tough spot for him in that 6th inning. So you have 2 runners on, one of them being Starling Marte, who got hit by a pitch right before Lindor steps in. He's facing Steve Cishek, who hit him in the face. Was laughing at my mispronunciation there, not at the circumstances. Want to be honest there. But yeah, that's tough. Okay. He's got a funky delivery as is. Not always the easiest guy to pick up. You just see your teammate get hit. And Lindor even acknowledged it after the game, saying, yeah, he was uncomfortable. He had to gather himself, but he does gather himself and he hits a 3-run homer that breaks the game open. And you just see him finding a way to continue to contribute to this team. And I think at a certain point, it's just past due to just stop worrying about money. Is he a $34.1 million player? I don't care, man. What I know is that the New York Mets are a lot better because they have Francisco Lindor in the lineup every day, because he's giving you Gold Glove defense at shortstop, and every single day is giving you leadership out there. 18 home runs, 73 RBIs this year. I mean, 789 OPS is a little behind his career numbers. But look, man, if he's going to give you, 25 to 30 home runs with Gold Glove defense, and this year looking like a 100 RBI season from him, I think you sign up for that at $34.1 million or whatever you're paying him. It doesn't matter to me. But that was a really great moment for him, to really kind of put this one in cruise control for the Mets. Max Scherzer, and a start where he labored a little bit, didn't have his best control, still goes 6 2/3, allows just 2 earned runs, 3 runs overall, has a 2.13 ERA through his first 14 starts in a Mets uniform. Joely Rodriguez gave the Mets a scoreless inning in this one. Adam Ottavino got the last 4 outs. He has been fantastic. ERA under 1 in his last 30 appearances at 0.87, a 2.21 ERA on the season. It's gotten to that point, folks, where you got Edwin Diaz that you trust as the best reliever in baseball, and Adam Ottavino is really just a fantastic setup man this season. I think that we can maybe drop some of our preconceived notions of what he would be this year and just accept that he's been a very solid pitcher. But that is still the primary area of concern at this trade deadline. I want to talk about bullpen arms that are still out there, just kind of give you an overview of what's happening around the league, and then we'll talk about where the Mets stand when it comes to maybe adding one more bat. Before we get to any of that, though, if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Are you ready to hear about this one? It's delicious. It's the indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built Bar has done it again. Their new flavor is the cookie dough chunk puffs, and they are light with a chewy texture. Real cookie dough chunks in there, and of course, all come covered in 100% real chocolate. The cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com right now to snag a box for you and your family. It will be the perfect treat where you can find a really good hiding place just so you can, hoard them for yourselves. Maybe you don't want to share them with your family. If you want to try the cookie dough chunk puffs today, go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, so going through, everything that happened in the league today, Josh Hader got traded from the Brewers to the Padres. That was a really big deal. Frankie Montas goes to the Yankees. That was a huge deal. We saw the Braves pretty active. Adam Duvall. I always mix them and Austin Riley up. I'm glad I caught myself. But Austin Riley is the player who gets the 10-year extension as the young stud third baseman who's on an absolute tear right now. So they make that move right before I hit record. They got Jake Odorizzi as a back-end starter. They pick up Robbie Grossman in the outfield. They're making those moves again around the edges that might make you nervous as a Mets fan, and I can get that. But here's the one thing I want to say before we get into what the Mets do from here. They have been active. They have made moves, and those moves have made them better. Since Vogelback's been in the lineup, they've won 7 in a row. He's given you great at-bats against right-handed pitching, and I really do think even if the Mets don't add any more bats, they will be okay with Mark Vientos potentially and JD Davis serving the other half of that platoon. And honestly, I have no confidence in JD Davis whatsoever in that, but he's going to get the run until Vientos comes up. I think it's a hole. I would hope that they were able to add someone that just gives you a decent floor, because you look at like Mark Canha, he has reverse splits this year. So they get Tyler Naquin. That's great. That's all fine and well. But that doesn't solve the issue here. Naquin, not great against lefties this year. Canha, not great against lefties this year. Vogelback, obviously not great against lefties. So all these different options you have, none of them solve the problem. These two additions still don't solve your problem against left-handed pitching. That's why right now, if they do nothing else, to me, Mark Vientos is really the only answer other than Francisco Alvarez getting a late promotion this season, which I don't know if they want to go to that. But what I think the Mets are really thinking about right now is how do we add to this team without mortgaging the future? And I know there's fans out there that say, hey, go for it, go for it, go for it. This is the time, this is the time. But you also have to weigh the improvement you're making. If you're telling me that you're trading 6 years of Mark Vientos for 2 months of Wilson Contreras and David Robertson in that deal as well, I can maybe swallow it. But if they're steadfast that they want more than Mark Vientos, they want Mark Vientos and Ron Mauricio, well, now you're trading too much prospect capital for rentals. And so I as much as you want to see the Mets go all in, they have to do it wisely. And Billy Epler is gauging the market. He so far has bought two pieces that he felt comfortable with the price that it took to acquire them in Vogelback and Naquin. If there's a right-handed bat available at a price the Mets feel comfortable, they'll move on it. But if you're talking about a rental bat, I'm okay with the Mets saying, no, we're not giving up our top six process. We're not giving up Alvarez, Beatty, Mauricio, Ronnie Ronnie Mauricio, Alex Ramirez, Mark Vientos, Matt Allen. If you're not giving up those six, I'm on board with that. And if Calvin Ziegler is off the table, I respect them because I know that they like that guy. And so if you can't get a deal done with a Dominic Hamill and a Khalil Lee and whatever else you want to throw together, Dom Smith is a player that the Red Sox apparently like, but maybe not enough to get a JD Martinez. You got to do what's best for your franchise moving forward. And giving up Pete Crow Armstrong last year for Javi Baez ended up not working out. Now, I will make an argument that had the Mets been a good team and they made the playoffs the way Baez was playing, it would have been a fine trade for a rental. But you can see how that backfires. If the Mets, make the move, right, and they get Wilson Contreras and David Robertson, and they trade, Ronnie Mauricio, Dominic Hamill, and they end up giving up like a lottery ticket on top of it. So they give kind of a huge return for those couple of guys. And then the Mets end up losing in 3 games in the division series. And you just get swept. Now, where are you? How much better do those additions make you? Are those the additions that win you the division? Are they the additions that win you the World Series? Because if they aren't, you got to weigh the pros and cons on whether you should make those moves. So right now, it seems like the Mets' primary focus is adding to their bullpen. And I think the cost to add to their bullpen is not going to require those top 6 prospects. I think they can get a Michael Fulmer at a reasonable cost. I think they can get a David Robertson at probably a more elevated cost than some of the other rental relievers, but still without having to tap into those top 6 if you're not getting Wilson Contreras back in the trade. And so with that, I think the Mets are sitting in a good position. Now, also, they have kind of put out a little bit of a narrative that they won't trade a Mauricio or a Vientos for a rental. Is that because they really feel that way, or is that because they're trying to drive up the value of their prospects in these negotiations? You're only getting one of those guys. Maybe that is Billy Epler's thing here. I would not panic right now because as I record this, we're approaching midnight. You still got 18 hours as I'm recording here. Depending on when you're listening, it's a 6 o'clock deadline. There's a ton of time for a deal to get done. And the way these things work, as I'm recording right now, I better check before I stop because the Mets could have made a move. And because I'm off Twitter right now for 15 minutes, we don't know. But the main focus right now is bullpen. I already mentioned a couple of the names available there. If they're to trade for someone with control, look at Gregory Soto, the closer of the Tigers. That's an interesting name. Andrew Chafin, I believe, has a year left after this deal, or after this year, I should say, when it comes to his contract. So that's a left-handed reliever the Mets could target. They're going to add an arm, I believe, if not 2 arms to their bullpen. I think the bigger question is if they add a DH, and we'll maybe touch on that a little bit on the other side of the break, but quick. Before that, a word from our sponsors. So I just took one last scan through Twitter, not seeing any moves the Mets have made right now. So it's looking again like they're going to head into the trade deadline day with a couple of needs still left to be addressed. But I think that the main need that continues to be the focal point has to be the bullpen, because that is something that I don't think they have an internal solution for. And while you could quibble about how good a Mark Vientos could be, he's certainly an option. Okay. I wish they would have tried him out before the deadline, so they could see if he is a viable option or not. But that at least is someone that they can call towards. So I think that where the Mets are sitting right now is they're trying to decide, is it worth trading a Mark Vientos or a Ronnie Mauricio instead of just letting Vientos take the job? And I think that if they go through this deadline and they don't make a move, I think you're going to see Vientos next week or maybe even this weekend. I don't know if they throw him into the fire in that series against the Braves, but look, JD Davis's performance doesn't really warrant a roster spot right now, in my opinion. So, and he has options too, if I'm not mistaken. I'll check to confirm that right now, but I believe he has an option still. So the Mets can send him down. They can call up Mark Vientos. They can see what they have. They can let JD play every single day. Now, yeah, he's got two options. So you can let JD Davis play every single day in Syracuse. Maybe he gets his swing going down there. And if Vientos doesn't work, you're hoping one of the two of them does, right? I think that's where they stand. And you look at the other options that we've talked about. JD Martinez has not been great as of late. There's concerns about his back. He still has rate against left-handed pitching this year, so he's an ideal fit, but you're going to take on a lot of money in that deal, and I don't think you should have to give too much. So if Billy Epler is digging his heels in the sand and saying, look, we'll give you Dom Smith and Dominic Hamill, for example, where you're going to get a starting pitcher who's, working through the minor leagues and has himself in high A and was drafted pretty high just last year. That's kind of the one piece you get. And Dom Smith is someone the Red Sox have previously shown interest in. They believe he could be a reclamation project. To me, that's like, all right, that makes sense. But to go too far to get a rental in Martinez, who might only be relegated playing against left-handed pitching, the way Vogelback's swinging the bat and the way the rest of the lineup is swinging the bat, and the fact that he's can't really play a position outside of DH or I guess first base. He used to be an outfielder, but I don't think you want to stick him out there. So, I mean, he's a DH only, Martinez is. So that doesn't really give you a lot of flexibility. Look, you can't give up too much for that. And so the other names that are out there, it's Brandon Juror we've talked about, but I think the Reds are trying to get a lot for him. Here's a guy who's got 20 home runs for them this year. They want to try to capitalize on his value, and they're shopping him everywhere. So that could be a deal that happens late. And you don't know if the Mets have the one prospect that they like more than others, because that's the type of trade where they're probably going to be focused on that one prospect they can get for Jury, even if there's multiple in the deal. It's going to come down to who's the one prospect they like, and you're not giving up Ronnie Mauricio or Mark Vientos for Brandon Drury. Same thing goes, as you kind of go down the line, whether it's a Wilmer Flores, if there's another right-handed bat that we haven't even mentioned. I mean, Kyle Farmer for the Reds is another guy that mashes left-handed pitching that could make some sense for the Mets. But I expect them to still make a couple of moves. I just don't know if to make the blockbuster. And I know as a Mets fan, it's frustrating because we all love the transaction. We love when the Mets go out and they sign a Max Scherzer or they sign Starling Marte or they swing a trade for Francisco Lindor. That's where all the buzz is at. Don't get me wrong. I mean, selfishly too, I'm hosting a show. You guys are going to tune in more if the Mets make a trade for Wilson Contreras than if they make a trade for Kyle Farmer. It's just reality of the situation. But when we're looking at what this team needs right now, I am watching a lineup that has come together over the past week that has 5 really good hitters in it. Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo, Marte, really solid. Canna's giving you good production. I like Vogelback in the lineup. I think Naquin and Escobar can surprise as these pieces that are a little further down the depth chart. I love me some Louis Guillorme. There's so many different contributors the Mets already have. I think the catcher position is one where you're cool with it being all defense. And Tomas Nido still seems to have a lot of timely hitting throughout this season. He's coming through with runners in the scoring position, if nothing else. And that's good for a defensive first catcher. Maybe James McCann gives you a little bit of juice when he comes back as opposed to Patrick Mazeika. But this is not a team that's far away. So if all that come out of the deadline is one lockdown reliever, to me, I say, well, you got to look at the full picture. And getting Vogelback was big. Getting that reliever will be big. And Naquin was a nice little piece that is an upgrade over Travis Jankowski, in my opinion. So with all that said, and by the way, Jankowski was claimed by the Mariners off of waivers. So Jank had a great run with the Mets here. As of now, it has come to an end, but I think that was still a move that you had to make based on the cost. And ultimately, I feel like the Mets are still in a really good position in this division. Yes, the Braves are going to be competitive all year. The next series, the 5-game series, is very much going to set the tone for the final stretch of the season. But this is a team right now that is set up to make a run with or without other moves. And you still have the biggest elephant in the room of all of this, and that's who's starting tonight for the Mets. Jacob Degrom is back in the mix. Frankie Montes is good. Luis Castillo is good. Pablo Lopez, if traded, is good. Away from starting pitchers, Wilson Contreras, Josh Bell, all these guys are great. But the only player that could move at this deadline that's more valuable than Jacob Degrom will be to the Mets if he's healthy is Juan Soto. That's it. Cut and dry. So you're getting a 2-time Cy Young back in a rotation that's been amazing. And you think about what this team has for the final stretch of the season. To have a rotation that's Scherzer, Degrom, Bassett, Carrasco, and Walker, probably the best rotation in baseball. To have the starting lineup that we've already talked about ad nauseum tonight. To have a bullpen that has maybe the best closer in baseball. There's worse things than the Mets not trading one of their top 6 prospects for a rental at this deadline. So that's just to prepare you from what could happen. And we'll see, because maybe Billy Epler is playing a game of chess and Ryan Mauricio is traded at 3:30 tomorrow, and Contreras and Robertson are Mets, and they go all in, and this team looks that much more potent. But all we can do at this point is wait and see what this team does. But anytime something happens, you can be sure that I'll be reacting to it on a podcast as quick as I can. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. You're subscribed on YouTube. You're following me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show account at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan has you covered with everything going on in Major League Baseball. They also got the trade deadline special. Want you to tune into that. I'll pop in if there's any Mets news, but it will be a fun day with this trade deadline. That is for sure.